With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels. On everything from lamps to ceiling fans. Even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox disinfecting wipes. Now available in... Ooh, crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox. Clean feels good.
Over the past 20 years, L'Oréal Paris has honored 200 women of worth for uplifting their communities. Women who see the worth in every person, overlooked or underserved, who see an opportunity for change, who see a chance for better. They may be one of 200, but their journeys are always uniquely one of one. Here's to 200 more women of worth.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
Hi, Nat Doig here. Just a heads up that this episode does include a reference to suicide and some strong language. And make sure that you listen until the end because there is an update from Andy's house from the last episode. And it was far more eventful visiting Andy's house this time than it was when I visited back in June. You won't want to miss it. Welcome to Weird in the Wade, a podcast about all that's weird, wonderful, and a little off-kilter in the town of Biggleswade in Bedfordshire and its surrounding area. If you like your history with a pinch of the paranormal and your supernatural stories with some historical context, then this is the podcast for you. Whether it's the tale of the Potton Road Poltergeist or discovering what's haunting Andy's house, grab a cuppa, sit back, and let me take you on a journey into the weird. It's Wednesday, the 1st of June, 1994. A modest house on the Potton Road, to the north of Biggleswade. The living room is unusually full of people. On the floor sit two young men. Now, they could be about to watch the footy or play a computer game, except between them, scattered on the carpet, are runed stones. On the settee sit Terry and Trudy Davis. Their youngest daughter, Lauren, not quite one, sits on Trudy's lap, burbling away to herself. The couple's other children are at school. On a comfy chair facing the window sits a photographer, and perched on the arm of that chair is a reporter, Nicola. She flips over a page in her spinal-bound notebook, pen paused. She's waiting to hear what Pep and Steve, the young men casting runes, have to say. Nicola wasn't expecting runecasters and soothsayers. She'd been hoping for a good old-fashioned Ouija board and séance. That's what her readers would expect. Is there anybody there? Hands hovering above a dark table, glasses glinting in candlelight, messages spelt out by a jittery planchette, pearl clutching, and gasps of horror from the spirit seekers. It was what her editor wanted as well. To be completely honest, Nicola had not expected to be called back to the Davises' house at all. Not after the April newspaper article she'd written about the strange goings-on in the Davises' house was published. This was not least because the editor had given her piece the ridiculous headline, "My best friend, the Poltergeist." It didn't relate to anything the Davises had told her about their so-called ghost. Nicola assumed she'd never hear from the couple again after that headline, unless it was to complain. But no, here she is, sitting in their living room, watching two lads cast runes in an attempt to understand the haunting. I mean, Nicola thinks, it's got to be all poppycock, hasn't it? Right? Steve, the runecaster, looks up towards Terry and Trudy.
Well,
he murmurs.
This rune here.
Steve is pointing at an unevenly oval bone-coloured stone with what looks like a strange capital N etched onto it.
This is Haglas. It represents hail, like in a storm. And that's kind of what it means. A storm, anger, wrath, like a lot of emotion. Now this rune is Fehu.
Nicola sees Steve point at a similar bone-coloured stone with a marking on it similar to an F.
Fehu represents wealth and abundance, but together they can mean almost a tornado or maelstrom of emotion, a wealth of trouble brewing. This could be in the house, or it could be with the poltergeist, or between you both.
Steve seems to be challenging the Davises. Then he softens.
That's why I asked you all those questions earlier about your relationship. I don't think it's your relationship that's the issue, though.
Nicola watches the couple closely. Trudy shifts slightly, turning her head away from her husband to gaze out of the window. Nicola had thought it odd that Steve and Pep had fired so many personal questions at the Davises before they got their runes out. The cynic in her thought that it was a tactic to elicit information from them that could be used later in the rune reading. But she now realises that the lads were actually trying to find a rational explanation for the turmoil in the house. Was there discord here? Unhappiness spilling over into spite within the marriage? Could one spouse be pranking the other? Was that possible? The first big paranormal event that the Davises both witnessed together was said to be the Christmas tree baubles spinning all by themselves when the rest of the tree and its decorations were left completely still. But could that have been a trick, somehow created by one of them to scare the other? The next incident was equally bizarre, but could have been created by a skilled illusionist, Nicola thought. Trudy had earlier explained to her. We were watching Coronation Street one evening, back in January. The decorations were down by then and life was getting back to normal. Their kids were in bed. Lauren was fast asleep here with us. She was teething at the time. It was Terry who saw it first. He grabbed my arm. He didn't say anything, but I could tell from his grip that he was scared. I turned to see what he wanted, and on that shelf there, to the left of the TV, the lid of Terry's fishing trophy was floating at least 6 inches above the trophy itself in midair. And it wasn't just floating. That'd be bad enough. It was spinning around and around. I was gobsmacked. I couldn't move. I just stared open-mouthed like a blimmin' goldfish. I couldn't even speak. It was like my mouth was full of mud. Then Terry leant forward. He got up and the lid just dropped. Not back in place, mind. It clattered onto the shelf next to the trophy. I made this most awful gurgling and choking sound trying to scream. It scared me so much. More than the Christmas lights. And I couldn't tell you why. Recalling the story and the genuine fear Trudy showed when telling it, Nicola shivers slightly as she glances at the same fishing trophy sitting on the shelf no more than a few inches from her. She leans forward, shoulders hunched away from the thing. Could it have been an illusion? Achieved with fishing wire or something similar, she wonders? Yes, it could, she thinks, ever the skeptic. Terry has started talking and Nicola has missed some of it. She sits up straighter, blinks, concentrates, tries to forget about the possessed trophy behind her.
I mean, I thought it could be my old dad coming through. He passed on a couple of years back. You see, when the TV channels started changing all by themselves, I thought it could be him. He loved that. When we got the doofer, you know, the remote control for the TV. Oh, my dad loved it. Flicking through the channels, declaring it was all rubbish. Nothing ever to watch on the box, he used to say. So when it started happening here, channels changing all by themselves, I thought it might be him. And retuning the radio, you know, that was happening too. From Radio 1, if there was loud guitar band on, it would change to Radio 2 all by itself, that kind of thing. But you're saying that this is someone who's angry or something that's angry. Dad was a bit of a moaner, but not an angry man.
None of this is going to work for the newspaper story, Nicola sighs inwardly. A grumpy old ghost dad who didn't want to watch Corrie or listen to grunge. This does not sell newspapers. She needs something scarier. What do you sense, Pip and Steve? Nicola asks the lads. They'd had a tour of the house earlier, before the rune casting. She'd noticed that when Pep said he felt a cold heaviness in the corner of the kitchen, Steve had said that the same spot was light and airy. They were giving contradictory responses, which again was not helpful to her. They didn't look the part either. Nicola had hoped for a woman medium in flowing skirts and scarves, hoop earrings and stinking of patchouli. But instead she'd got these two lads, who looked like they could be off down the pub for a swift half. The lads aren't charlatans, though, she thought. The lads had both checked if there were emotional and even environmental reasons for the phenomena, asking about the railway, the roads, and even about tunnels. So the charlatan angle can't be the news story. They seem to genuinely want to help the couple. It's Steve who answers Nicola's question.
Well, there's definitely an entity here. A poltergeist, for want of a better word to describe it.
Pep nods his head, then bows as if in prayer.
I don't think you brought it with you.
Steve now addresses the couple, not Nicola.
Though I did wonder that at first, but now I can see quite clearly that the energy is associated with the house. Well, maybe not the house as such, but the place. Your house isn't that old in the scheme of things. I've investigated 500-year-old manor houses, you know, and churches that have been here for millennia.
Steve seems to notice the Davises glance at one another, a flicker of disappointment on their faces, a slump in their shoulders.
But there is an energy here, or spirit, I'm sure of it. A ghost that has been disturbed by the changes. Your move into this house with your family, it's a lot for them, the ghost that is. All the new people, the new movement, the sounds, the smells, the new furniture, the new belongings. That has disturbed something. It's making its confusion known to you the only way it can. I sometimes think of these ghosts, these energies or spirits, as being like floating on the surface of the ocean. We're on the bottom of that ocean. Most times the ocean is deep and we can't see the surface shadows and they can't see us on the sand. We couldn't reach each other even if we wanted to. But sometimes the water is not so deep and we might get a glimpse of each other. But we can't see each other accurately, not clearly. But at other times, the tide changes and we are in the shallows. Then sometimes, when that is the case, we can see each other and they, the spirits or energies, try to reach us. But just like if you try to catch a fish with your bare hands, it's not easy. You must aim just ahead of the fish. But these energies can't do that. They keep plunging in, trying to contact us, and they keep missing. A TV channel switches over, a lid of a trophy lifts. Your Christmas decorations spin. But that's not what the energy or spirit is trying to do. That's just a lot of splashing in the shallows as it tries to reach you meaningfully, and can't. It's the same the other way. Most people are not aware of the spirits at all, never will be. But some of us, we can sense them, like shadows above us on the surface of the ocean. We can't swim up to them, we're just not strong enough. But some of us try. Our view of them imperfect, floating there, we only see a shadow. We can try and make a connection, hope that they see us on the sand moving below them. We try to communicate with them. Sometimes it works, other times, I'm not sure. So what has happened here, I suspect, is that the tide has turned because of you moving in. You've caused the ripples and disturbances which the spirit or ghost has picked up on. He can see you, but he can't reach you. He can't hurt you. He's just trying to let you know that he's here, but all you're seeing is a load of meaningless splashing, spinning lights and trophies, bumps and bangs. In these situations, as you settle into the house and the tide will settle, and the depth and space between you and the ghost will grow and fill, and then you'll not be aware of each other. I'd say after 6 months, give it another 6 months, and the ghost will be gone.
Nicola stops writing. This man in the plain t-shirt and jeans, with his ordinary haircut and trainers, has just explained something that has sent her spidey senses tingling. This can't go in the newspaper. Even if she tried to, the editor would cross it all out. Mumbo jumbo, he'd say. Nonsense. But Nicola stores it away in the back of her mind as one of the most intriguing things she's ever heard. From the look of satisfaction on the faces of the Davises, they too seem to be relieved. Baby Lauren giggles and the photographer snaps away, asking the lads to pose in front of the runes on the carpet. Nicola has no idea if Steve really believes what he just said, but she thinks he does. She considers it herself. How we humans lumber around in the ocean, splashing, swimming, clearly not designed for that environment anymore. How must we appear to the creatures on the bottom of the sea, on the sand below us as we swim? She ponders the miles and miles of ocean in the Mariana Trench. There are creatures which live down there that have never seen daylight. Creatures that no human has ever laid eyes on. We are not ghosts to those deep ocean creatures. If they could think like us, we don't even exist for them. But if a storm churned them up to the surface, what on earth would they make of this alien world of dry land, of sky, of sun, moon and people? Would we not be the aliens? The poltergeists? The ghosts that they could never reach? Welcome to Weird in the Wade. I'm Nat Doig, and today we're going to investigate poltergeists, and in particular this haunting along the Potton Road in Biggleswade, which took place in the 1990s. In researching this story, I came up against some interesting ethical dilemmas, and so I wanted to explore those as well. And because I am not a paranormal investigator, I'm a storyteller really, and an amateur historian. So I spoke with the fabulous Bethan Briggs-Miller of Eerie Essex podcast and the East Anglian Folklore Centre. We talked about experiencing hauntings in your own home and red and green flags to look out for if you are going on a ghost hunt, or as Bethan prefers to call them, a ghost meander. Poltergeists. Before we get into some more detail about the Potton Road poltergeist case, it's worth refreshing our memories about what poltergeists are and what makes them different to other haunting phenomenon. Was the Potton Road poltergeist actually a poltergeist or some other category of haunting? Any listeners of Uncanny will know that the wonderful Evelyn Hollow has developed a poltergeist scale or rating system. This is important for measuring haunting experiences, whether you are a skeptic or believer. It seems that those who experience unusual phenomenon often identify the occurrences along this scale. So whether you're looking for spiritual meaning or scientific evidence, it's worthwhile following this scale. You'll recognise the stages of the poltergeist haunting from many of the cases I have covered in Weird in the Wade, not least Aggie, the poltergeist of the haunted pound stretcher. Stage 1. Presence. That feeling that you are not alone, that you are being observed. In the Potton Road poltergeist story, from the moment Terry stepped into the house by himself, he felt that there was someone there watching him. This is common in many haunting phenomena, and by itself does not a poltergeist make. Stage 2. Noises. Again, from the very beginning, Terry reported hearing footsteps, initially coming from the kitchen. Then both he and his wife heard unexplained bangs and knocks from around the house, as well as more footsteps, this time coming from above. Again, hearing these kinds of sounds is common in many hauntings. Stage 3. Moving objects. Terry and Trudy both witnessed the Christmas tree lights spinning, the trophy lid levitating, but it often begins more subtly with just items not being where you left them. Think of the haunted pound stretcher case where items would move overnight in the shop. If your haunting experiences is ticking these boxes, you're moving into poltergeist territory. Stage 4. Apporting and disapporting of objects. This is where solid objects disappear or reappear, or appear with no logical explanation. Remember in the last episode, Carol suggested that the crystals found in Andy's house could have been apports. And actually pebbles and stones are very commonly reported in poltergeist cases as being apports. At the haunted pound stretcher, objects would just disappear. And in fact, this has continued to occur at Jones's coffee shop, which replaced the pound stretcher. There is a story about a piece of cutlery just disappearing in front of a member of staff, and it has never been found. Stage 5, destruction. This moves on from just items being moved to items being destroyed or used in a violent manner. In the haunted pound stretcher case, it went from items just tipping off shelves to coffee jars being flung across the shop. It's at this stage that quite often words like angry and violent are used to describe the phenomenon. It takes on a personality, whether a projection from us or an actual sense of self that the energy has. I think we can also include things like fire alarms and burglar alarms going off for no reason in this section, because it's about eliciting a response of fear or annoyance from those affected. It's more than just interference, it's messing with people on a different level. It's frightening in a different way to, say, finding a pile of coffee neatly stacked underneath a coffee machine that you've cleaned. Stage 6. Communication. This is where the poltergeist communicates with those being haunted. It can be through notes or writing appearing on walls, or it can be through voices being heard. In the haunted pound stretcher, some members of staff heard their names being called. Mary, Mary. And mimicking other people's voices can also happen in this stage of the poltergeist experience. Remember, we recorded that voice that sounded like Paul at the old pound stretcher, but Paul was not 100% sure it was him, or that he'd even spoken at that point. I don't think we'll ever categorically know, but when I told him that poltergeists can sometimes mimic people, we both shivered. And maybe even the TV and radio channel changing in the Potton Road poltergeist case could be seen as a form of communication. Stage 7, the rarest stage of all, threat to life. This could be through bruises, scratches, or marks being left on a person. It could be through physical trapping of a person in a room by holding a door shut, as happened in the haunted pound stretcher. It is extremely rare, but understandably terrifying for those who experience it. Thankfully, this stage was not reached by the haunting on the Potton Road, but I think the haunting can be classed as a poltergeist experience because of the moving of objects, the noises, and the possible attempt at communication. So how do I know this story about the Potton Road poltergeist? The short answer is because it was covered in the local newspaper. In April and June 1994, 2 main articles covered the haunting. Now, I've changed the names of the family involved because I've not been able to track them down. The Davises is a pseudonym, as are their first names Terry and Trudy. Even though the couple went to the newspaper themselves seeking publicity, I'm conscious that it was over 30 years ago and their children will now be adults. They didn't choose for their parents to tell this story, and because I couldn't track them down to ask them about the haunting, I decided it was best to not identify them by name. In fact, when I was attempting to track the family down, a local Facebook group started speculating about which house on the Potton Road had been haunted. I asked people to not identify the house, but of course speculation grew and someone did suggest a house number. This then prompted a neighbour to become alarmed at the thought of their house being affected too. I was able to reassure them that the haunting ended and that the house was cleansed. But this was the exact ethical dilemma I was trying to avoid. I don't want to make anyone feel afraid or to upset anybody by telling these stories, particularly if it's about a house that you now live in. So that's why I became interested in the ethics of telling and retelling ghost stories like this, but more on that later. I've brought to life the newspaper articles in the dramatic introductions to this and the last episode. The couple and their children moved into their new house. The husband experienced haunting activity from the very start, and they got the local newspaper involved after 6 months in the hope that someone reading the article could offer them some support. And 2 young men did offer support and called round to cast runes and cleanse the house. And the newspaper reported on this also. And then that's it. No more. no more information. The newspaper reporter, who was called Nicola, makes it clear that she did not sense anything in that house, and the articles about the family are straightforward and non-judgmental. I tried to track Nicola the journalist down, but drew a blank. Each article in the newspaper is accompanied by others which talk about Ghostbusters and include cartoon images of ghosts, and they generally ham it up a bit for the readers in those accompanying articles. They also share in one article other Bedfordshire ghost stories, including ones that we've covered on the show. One week, the newspaper even runs an advert placed by the Gardener's Arms, a pub along the Potton Road, using the same cartoon ghost images that they used in the articles. The advert reminds customers that they have spirits of a different kind on offer at the pub. It does seem that the whole town was having a little bit of fun with this story. My research only confirmed that the family indeed had lived in that house on Potton Road, and some locals still remembered them, and quite fondly. I was told that the family had moved away a few years later, before or around the year 2000. One helpful local told me that she believed that the house had been haunted, but that the cleansing had worked, and no one had been bothered since in that house. I resigned myself to never really ever finding out anything more about the haunting, until I realised that the family and the journalists were not the only witnesses. There were the runecasters, one of whom was named in the newspaper article. I didn't have a lot of hope that I'd be able to find him, but one Sunday afternoon I found a Facebook profile for a man with the same name who was still interested in runes, Norse mythology, and Viking reenactments. Could he be the same guy? I messaged him, and to my shock and delight, he replied.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
So the first thing I need to tell you is that Steve and Pep are also pseudonyms. Sadly, Pep passed away a few years back, and Steve was happy to be given a pseudonym in the circumstances. Pep cannot give his permission, so they're both anonymous. What was surprising was that although Steve identified that it was most probably him and his Pep in the newspaper article photograph, and it's a pretty grainy picture, he had no lasting memory of visiting the house in Biggleswade whatsoever. But it was something that he did at the time. Readings, rune castings, house cleansings. He said he was all over the place doing them back then in the early mid-90s. He even designed his own rune set and wrote books on the subject. One had just been published in the early 90s. Whatever happened in Biggleswade just wasn't out of the ordinary for him. Even the journalist being there wasn't ringing any bells. We ended our brief correspondence with him admitting that it had to be him, but that whatever happened in that house just wasn't remarkable enough for her to have stayed with him over the last 30 years. And in itself, that is pretty remarkable, that visiting a haunted house to cleanse it was just so run-of-the-mill that for Steve, it was just another day in the office. If you asked me what lectures I attended in May 1993 at university, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you, because that's what I did every day. Imagine, though, that your life is cleansing haunted houses, and it just feels like any ordinary activity. That really is pretty remarkable. I think it's useful at this point to place the Potton Road poltergeist story in some historical context. The family moved into their house exactly a year after a TV programme called Ghostwatch was shown on BBC One. For those of you unfamiliar with this TV programme, it was fronted by well-known and much respected TV presenters. There was Michael Parkinson in the studio. He was a silver-haired Yorkshireman who was usually seen hosting popular chat shows, hanging out with celebrities. With him in the studio was Mike Smith, who was the kind of presenter equally at home on children's TV or on popular Saturday night family entertainment. His wife, the children's TV presenter Sarah Green, was on location in a suburban house which was supposed to be haunted by a ghost named Mr. Pipes. Throughout the show, the poltergeist's activity increased, and a believer and skeptic in the studio, played by actors, as were the family in the house, shared their thoughts. In the end of the show, Sarah Green was locked in a cupboard under the stairs with a screaming ghost, and Parkinson had been possessed in the studio. Now, Ghostwatch was shown in a slot known as Screen on One, which showcased drama, often one-off dramas, at 9 p.m. on BBC One. But because Sarah Green and Mike Smith had links to family and children's programmes, and all the presenters had connections with factual TV, many children and families watched the show together, thinking it was a real documentary. I watched Ghostwatch again a few months back and was struck by how clever it was, how believable and frightening it was. Stephen Volk, who wrote it, did a fantastic job, as did the presenters and actors. Needless to say, many who watched it did not cotton on to it being a drama. Mockumentaries weren't as common back then as they are now. Also bear in mind that most household TVs only received 4 channels at the time. There was no social media, no internet as such. This was prime time viewing, and it seemed like the whole country watched it and was terrified by it. The BBC received countless phone calls that night, jamming the phone lines, and this was a scenario that was being played out on the drama. The show made out that viewers at home were phoning in to say that they were now experiencing poltergeist activity in their own homes. Speak to anyone in the UK who watched it as a child or teenager, and they'll tell you how terrifying it really was. When I became a teacher in 1996, that's 4 years after the programme aired, kids still talked about Mr. Pipes if anything spooky happened. Tragically, a young man with learning disabilities watched the show, and according to his parents, the fear it created contributed to his deteriorating mental health. The young man sadly took his own life just 5 days after the show aired. The BBC received complaints, and the British media was critical of the way that the show had been portrayed as if it was a documentary. It wasn't shown again on the BBC until 30 years after its first broadcast, and conspiracy theories grew up around it. One claimed that Sarah Green had advertised the programme on Saturday morning children's television, but there's no evidence for that at all. So when the local newspapers are reporting on the Potton Road poltergeist, it was only a year to 18 months after that Ghostwatch programme had gripped the nation. Briefly, it seems that poltergeists were the zeitgeist. The X-Files was also being shown for the first time in 1993, and spookiness was having a small moment. It's interesting how these phases of interest in hauntings and the uncanny are cyclical. For many of us, me including, our interest never wanes, but it seems society's appetite does ebb and flow. The 1970s saw a real interest in hauntings and folk horror, the early 90s in ghosts and aliens, and since 2020 and the pandemic, the interest in all things uncanny has waxed once more. I'm hoping it doesn't diminish this time. Did the early 90s brief interest in the paranormal give confidence to the family that I have called the Davises to share their story? I wonder how their neighbours and friends treated them after seeing the articles in the newspaper. I think it was very brave of them to go to the press like they did. It's interesting that some long-term residents of Biggleswade do remember this happening, and they spoke of the family with some fondness. They weren't run out of town for mentioning ghosts then. In the dramatic introduction, I made up the explanation that I have Steve giving the family, the one about the oceans and shadows, tides flowing in and out, so that sometimes spirits and mortals can see one another. But I do know that he told the family that the energy or poltergeist would fade within 6 months, and it appeared that his interpretation was correct. His presence cleansing the house gave the family some comfort, and it seems lasting peace for the home. And so I wanted to speak with someone who had a greater understanding than I do of experiencing a haunting phenomena, but also experience of ghost hunts or investigations. And Bethan Briggs-Miller seemed to be the perfect person to speak with about this. She is overqualified, as you'll find out. You do so many fascinating things.
I do too many fascinating things. That's why I'm permanently tired, Natalie, but I love it all. So I'm one of the co-hosts of Eerie Essex podcast, and I also co-run a folklore centre in Colchester, the East Anglian Folklore Centre, and doing an MA in wild writing and folklore. I've given myself a lot to do.
Yeah, you really have, but you do it all amazingly. So,
thank you.
No, you do. Thank you so much for joining me, because I really wanted to talk to somebody who's got a really sort of holistic view of paranormal investigation from all sides. And you're one of those unique people, I think, who does. The first question that I wanted to ask you really is, have you ever had any experience of living somewhere that might be haunted and having that place kind of cleansed or exorcised? That's the right word.
I have.
Exorcised.
That is exercise, put on a treadmill. Yes, the house I grew up in Wales. It was about a 250-year-old cottage, a long history of massive families living there. And looking back at the history, a lot of pretty horrible deaths because it was across from the ironworks. And this was the days before health and safety. And we had a lot of ghosts. When you live in a haunted space, it's not like in the films where something happens, every minute. Something could happen one year, something might not happen till the next year, so it's more spaced out. You get used to it. So, except we had one room that had a particularly nasty entity. It wasn't a ghost. I can't describe it. It was like a cold greenhouse atmosphere. It sucked the life out of you. And that was my room.
Oh, no.
And also, stereotypically, I grew up in there in my teenage years.
I was just going to say, how old were you? So you were a teenager when it was feeling like that.
I was a very boring teenager, Natalie, so I don't think it got much off me. Poor thing must have been starving.
What happened then? You obviously noticed that this wasn't pleasant. Did somebody come round and cleanse, or?
Yes, so after years and years of telling my mum and dad that I left the room for 2 minutes, came back and everything was turned upside down. The phone started picking up an angry male voice. I woke up with scratches on me. Friends were slapped in that room, like a real collection of paranormalness. And so years went by. I moved down to Essex, and that room became the spare room. And one night my mum was lying in bed after having an operation because my dad kept rolling into her. And she said she was reading a book, she put it down, turned the light off, and the room got plunged into this cold, this like really cloying sort of cold. And on the opposite side of the room, something started crawling up the wall. She saw it out of the peripheral vision, but she also heard it. It crawled across the ceiling, dropped onto the bed, and crawled up her legs and said in her face, "Get out." And all of a sudden they believed me. After all these years, and I was very good. I didn't say "told you so." I went, "Oh dear, that sounds terrible." And they didn't tell anyone.
No.
They called the priest the next day. just to do a house blessing. Now, in the Catholic Church, you could, I think in a lot of churches, you can just ask for a blessing. And it was a new priest. He was from South Africa, and I think very open-minded, and they're a lot closer to ritual and folk belief. So perhaps a lot more open-minded. So he came round, really lovely man, and he did a blessing in all the rooms. And he got to that room, Natalie, he got to that room, and he turned to my dad and he said, "Why didn't you tell me about this demon?"
Oh my God.
So he sent them downstairs. He said, "I'm going to be here a while." And he did a full exorcism on the room. And they heard him shouting, "Get out of this place. Christ repel," the full works, the full Hollywood works. And about 45 minutes later, he came down, and he was ill for quite a while afterwards. But they didn't tell me there had been an exorcism. I came home after visiting them, and I said, "Oh, you finally got the heating after all these years working in that room. It's warm at last." Pity we couldn't have found out earlier. My mum's like, "Funny you should say that. Sit down." And then it all came out.
Wow, that is an amazing story. I mean, that's an uncanny episode in itself. It really is.
Danny, looking at you.
Yeah, we need to go and investigate. I mean, that is, I mean, what an awful thing for your mum to experience, and for you growing up.
Well, you'd think that would put me off, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and yet it's something that you are fascinated with and are still working within.
Yeah, I know. What does that tell you?
But it's interesting. I'm guessing your family were part of that church. So when they went to the priest, they knew who he was and they trusted him to come round and bless the house.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. And they didn't prime him. So they didn't say there's something in that room upstairs. So, that's, if we're talking about like green flags, red flags to look out for, which I think we're going to, aren't we? About what to look out for when you're visiting places, is how much you're primed and how much other people are picking up on what the people are telling you. It's easily done. We all do it. But that's one of the key things. Have I been primed? I didn't know this to begin with. And as someone who leads a lot of like talks and records people's stories, it's so easy to fall into the trap of narrating along with them and leading them down a path. You've got to be very careful not to set the scene. It's like let the story unfold in their words. So.
Yeah, definitely. And actually that leads us on to what I was going to ask you about. So, I mean, I have still got so many questions about that first story you told me, but let's save that for a future episode.
Yes.
We can do a collaboration and we can explore that in more detail. But, like you say,
up for that.
Brilliant. You are someone who works in collecting folklore, folk tales, ghost stories. You also are someone who has attended sort of ghost hunts, I believe, and events where you're sort of investigating the paranormal. And as you said, there are sort of red flags and green flags. So with your kind of experience, what are the things that you'd say if somebody listening now is thinking, well, I want to go on a ghost hunt, I want to go on a paranormal investigation? What kind of things from your experience would you like? This is a red flag, this is a green flag.
Okay, this is going to sound like we did like a Tinder date, what to look out for.
Yes.
So for me, the more flash and the more money spent, to me, cynical mind, I think, okay, people have paid a lot of money for this, so you might want things to happen to make it worth their while. I'm actually more inclined to go with the haphazards, almost free ones. Let's come along. We'll have a look together, all open-minded. I think less corporate.
Yeah.
If you want entertainment and you want an experience and you think, oh, I just want that, I'm not actually seriously looking, then those events are great. I'm not decrying them, but I think if you're wanting to get a genuine experience, you've got to accept that nothing might happen.
Yeah.
And I trust places that say, oh, we didn't have anything happen. Oh, you're good then, because you're being honest and something doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely it. I think another one for me, a green flag, is where they're kind of welcoming for you to go and have a chat with them beforehand, before you go out, maybe have a coffee or a cup of tea.
Yeah.
If they're one of those kind of, I mean, like you say, I think if it's a group that's very flashy and they're going to places that are really well known as being haunted, then you're going to get something that's a bit slicker and it's probably going to be more like entertainment. But if you've got a local group who are saying, let's go to this place and, we're going to do a ghost hunt, I think then it is always a green flag if they're like saying, but come and have a chat with us first, come and meet us, come and have a coffee, come and do something a bit more social before we go straight plunged into turning up at this venue that's supposedly haunted. Definitely.
Yeah, I think if you can't connect with the living, you're not going to have much luck with the dead.
Yes, definitely. And I think the other thing is that it's got to be someone that you kind of feel fun with and that you can feel relaxed with. You know, it's not, I know we go on these things because we want the thrill, but you don't want to be feeling kind of left out or not included. You want to feel like these are people that you can spend some time with.
You do. And I think that energy that you gather with doing something like that is important, especially when we're talking about, you know, people do go into places where horrific things have happened. Whether you believe or not, there could be people in the group quite sensitive to that, quite vulnerable to that. And I went on a ghost hunt once where I knew the history of the building very well. I won't name it because I don't want to have a go at groups because that's not fair. But this particular building that I went on this sounds like I'm going with a gun. I went on a meandering with. They started twisting the story to fit a more dramatic adventure. And they started using phrases like, oh, the evil witches. Now, that is, I mean, this is a very specific red flag for this area in Essex. When we talk about the witch trials, we're not talking about Disney witches. We're talking about poor, vulnerable, outsided women who were hunted. And it was a terrifying time to live. And it was gendercide. It wasn't a witch hunt. And then using that terminology, I find that quite disrespectful. I hate it when all this disrespectful language comes out because it's still a space with an energy if you believe that. So why would you be discompassionate? It's just for the thrill. It's just to give people what they want, which I understand, but at the same time, I think is damaging.
Yeah. And again, I think it really depends on the space that you're in and who you've rented that space from, because you're a custodian of a very special space, aren't you?
I am, yes. Me and my friend Gemma Oakley, we run the East Anglian Folklore Centre, and it's in this beautiful building, the Minories in Colchester. And we get a lot of people coming in who are practitioners as well as the curious and people who are just interested in folklore. We get everyone through the door, and we get covens in, we get lots of people. And we're very mindful that we are, as you said, custodians. We don't own that space. I think even if you own it monetarily, you don't. You're a caretaker of, especially if it's an old building, you're there to take care of it. We talk to the building. We literally tell, like, you know, like the old saying, tell the bees.
Yes.
We tell the lady of the house, because there was this lovely, wonderful woman. I can't remember her name now because that's my brain, but we call her the lady of the house. She left the house to Colchester to keep it as a creative space. And we feel like we've garnered this relationship with this spirit. When we had to move out for 2 weeks, she started flinging things around the room, like, no. So we're like, we're coming back, don't worry. So when people come in who've got that sort of poking a hornet's nest for thrills mentality, I find it very disrespectful and tasteless.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too harsh because of my beliefs, but that's the side of the fence I sit on with that one.
Yeah. No, I think I sit on that side of the fence with you as well. I think it is about respect. And, you know, if you're a believer or you're like me, where you're kind of open-mindedly curious, people are experiencing something. And I certainly pick up on energies in different places. You know, just like if it was my own home, I wouldn't want someone coming into my house and sort of poking and kicking and drilling and saying, you know.
Exactly.
And so that type of, can you do this for us kind of, you know, ghost hunt, I don't find particularly comfortable. I would much rather be trying to just kind of feel the space, enjoy being in it, curious about what might happen, rather than actually trying to poke something into reacting in some way. If we've got anyone listening at the minute who might be experiencing something where they live or work even, that they feel is a haunting type phenomena, are there things that you think that you can do, that people can do to just help themselves feel more comfortable in those spaces if they feel that they're sharing that space, say, with other energies or spirits?
I think something as simple as talking to the house as if it's a sentient being, because it is. That's one of the first rules in the craft, in witchcraft, is talk to your home. It's a sanctuary. So why wouldn't you talk to it with respect? So I think just start with that. Tell the house of the comings and goings. Tell the spirit if it's making you uncomfortable. I've had to do it in my house. I've got shit going down.
Yeah, in your house.
In my house. And it's not particularly scary, but it's when you're trying to put kids to bed, you don't want the figure leaning around the door frame listening into the bedtime stories because it's creepy. So I had to go I had to go and talk to this entity and go, look, I'm picking up good vibes off you, but can you just scatter off or something when we're doing bedtime stories, make yourself scarce. And it has.
Brilliant. In these couple of episodes that I've just done, crystals have been talked about a lot, about bringing crystals into a room to kind of maybe lighten it up and just make the energy feel that little bit clearer. But also I know a lot of people go in for smudging, where you burn herbs and stuff and for people that don't know, and wave it around the house. But I know you and Icy Sedgwick have got a theory about this.
Yeah, I think crystals I really like. I think there's a lot of ways you can use crystals for harmony and just connection. But smudging, I always am a bit wary of, because yes, it can, if you believe, it can get rid of the bad. It can drive out stale energy, negative energy, but it can think about a body with antibiotics. It can get rid of the good as well as the bad. And you don't want to end up with paranormal thrush, Natalie.
No, we really don't.
Caniston don't make a thing for that.
They don't. Well, maybe somebody should. Spiritual Caniston. Other brands of thrush medicine are available.
Yeah. Yes.
But on that note, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Bethan, for coming to speak to me today and talk with us about the green flags, the red flags when it comes to the paranormal and paranormal investigations and ghost hunts. And thank you so much for sharing your experience growing up. And I think we definitely are going to have to revisit that. Yeah, definitely. That is such a fantastic story. Danny, if you're listening, that needs to be investigated on Uncanny. Thank you so much, Bethan.
Thank you for having me on.
I am so grateful to Bethan for sharing with us her experiences and for giving us some tips of what to look out for if we are considering going on a ghost meander or investigation. Now, at the very start of the show, I promised you an update from Andy about the haunting phenomena going on in his house. Now, Andy still thinks and hopes that he will find a rational explanation, an environmental reason for what he is experiencing. But I popped round earlier this week to have a chat with him about what's happened since the episode was released. And I got more than I bargained for in visiting him. I am back in Andy's house. It's a beautiful sunny day. The living room window in Andy's house is absolutely gorgeous, and the sun coming through the window. Both Andy and I were at the live recording. Obviously I was yesterday for the podcast, and Andy was in the audience, and we did celebrate afterwards, so I am feeling a little fragile today. It's really lovely to be back here, Andy. How's the reception been for you for the episode?
Really positive. I think there was almost a sense of relief when it came out, because it, right up until the point it's released, it's all very exciting, and then you suddenly think, oh wow, actually I've gone out there and said something that's quite personal. It's been really positive. The response has been great. Most of my friends and family have listened and are really excited by it and have been really, really positive. And also a few people just down the pub and comments on Facebook from your posts have been really positive, and it's been really, really nice.
Oh, that's so good. I've had nothing but positive feedback. Everybody loved that episode, which I was really pleased about. I have to say, there have been a few comments where people are saying how brave you are to stay here. I just wanted to reiterate, you don't feel particularly frightened, do you, by the stuff here?
Not even a bit frightened. No unease, nothing sinister at all in this house. It's all good.
Yeah, and I have to say it's got such a lovely atmosphere. It's a really still and quiet place, peaceful. Have you experienced anything else since I interviewed you back in June?
Yes, there's been a few things, sort of the usual bumps and footsteps, which are a reasonably regular occurrence, sort of maybe once a week. My little dog Dolly spotting things and kind of reacting to things that I can't detect, see or hear. And then since the episode went out, and obviously I think there are probably reasons for it, but there's been a few kind of more substantial things have happened just this week. The main one being on Tuesday last week, which was the day after the episode came out. I was sat at my desk working upstairs, and Dolly she was on my lap while I was working, and she suddenly, her head went up and her ears were up, and she jumped off my lap and ran downstairs, and as she kind of hit the floor, I heard one of my kitchen chairs pull out from under the table. Oh, that's what it sounded like to me, like a slight scrape. And then that's when Dolly barked and dashed downstairs, and I thought, well, I heard that, that was so definitely in my kitchen that it wasn't like a sort of a footstep on the stairs that I'm kind of expecting. It was a different sound, not and so I thought perhaps I left the back door open and a cat had come in, because I do sometimes leave the back door open for Dolly to get out. I hadn't, and so the chairs didn't look like they'd moved. There was absolutely nothing there, and so that was sort of quite a new sound and something quite different. So I kind of did the only logical thing I could think was and set a mousetrap. Because I just thought, where else could it have been? It was, there's nothing else in this house apart from me and Dolly, and the doors were shut. So that was a bit strange.
By the way, did you catch a mouse?
No. The trap's still set with a bait in it, and no mouse. So
it's a really interesting one that you thought you heard the chair basically scrape back as if somebody had moved it away from pulled it out from the table, but nothing had moved.
No, not that I could tell, but I don't know how far in or out the chair was to start with. It's not something I'd take notice of. So, what else? There was a thump in the corner of this room. There's a cabinet there which has got my electric and gas meter in it, like a wooden cabinet, and that made a sound like somebody had thumped it. And my neighbours are on holiday, they're back now, and I thought, well, perhaps they've got back and that was their front door opening or closing, because Dolly ran straight to the cabinet. And so I looked out the front window to see if their drive was full with a car and they were unloading anything, and they weren't back yet. So that was a strange one. And then also I had a friend over that they were having a cup of tea, and Dolly was on my lap, and she reacted to something kind of just to my left here, not quite in the fireplace, but sort of the pillar next to the fireplace was really what she was transfixed at, and I was trying to see if there was a bug or a spider or something she spotted, and my friend even noticed it, and I sort of said, and we've been talking about the podcast obviously, and so of course it all, and she said, well, what's she looking at? And I don't know, and so that those things have happened, and I have a few theories as to why I might be thinking about them, but obviously I've been thinking about it lots because of the podcast is out this week, and you can't help but go on social media and look at what people are saying about it. I think that's human nature. So it's been sort of probably constantly in my mind or in the back of my mind all week. And obviously human nature likes to explain everything, doesn't it? You can't have unexplained things, or I can't anyway. And so I think probably these are probably just sounds of things that have happened that I have, maybe something slipped on the draining board, and I thought that sounded like the chair scraping. It could have just been the building slightly moving or something. You get a bump or a click, and so I just think it's my brain filling in the gaps because it's already ticking away, thinking about the episode and the sort of things I've been talking about.
Yeah, so I know, again, if Kieran O'Keefe was sitting on my shoulder, and I often feel that he is, he'd talk about priming. And that's the psychological thing of where I'm just hoping we caught the sound of the wind coming down the chimney, because it's brilliant, and it is quite breezy today. And also I've noticed actually this time, I'll come back to the priming in a second, but this time that I've been recording here, a couple of times I have actually felt that rumble from the trains.
Yes.
Which I didn't notice last time I was here. So again, I wonder if sometimes the direction of the wind can make that more noticeable. But about priming, the psychologists will talk about priming, that if you're already aware of, like, other people experiencing a haunting, or what you're experiencing suddenly becomes more in the front of your mind, so because of the podcast episode, you start to, just as you said, notice things and chalk them up to being related to whatever the phenomena is that's happening, where maybe before I came in here in June and started talking to you about it, you might not have noticed it or remembered it.
Now, I just want to take you back to that bit just a few moments ago where I said, I hope we caught that, the sound of the wind in the chimney. Now, it was very breezy yesterday when I recorded this, and every now and again you could hear the wind groaning down the chimney, that really spooky sound that you get in old houses with chimneys. But when I went back to listen to it, I didn't hear the sound of the chimney. Instead, I heard this. I played it for you there twice, and I honestly can't work out what it is. It must be the sound of the wind down the chimney, except it's recorded on the field recorder and microphone maybe slightly differently to how we actually heard it in the room. That to me sounds like a knock or a bang, and not the sound of wind down a chimney. Now, this wasn't the only time that I heard something yesterday afternoon at Andy's house. In a minute, we'll come back to the end of the interview with Andy. But once I'd packed up all my equipment and drank my cup of tea, and we were getting ready to take Dolly out for a walk, I suddenly heard the very distinctive sound of somebody running upstairs. And the direction was coming from the front of the house towards the back. And it was right next to where I was sitting. So if you had asked me, I would have said there is definitely a set of stairs on the other side of that wall, and somebody just ran up the first few steps. And I didn't hear the rest of the steps. So it was literally like somebody running up the stairs going, and then no more. And it was really, really clear. And Andy heard it as well, recognised it as being that sound that he often hears. We went to check, and the next doors were not in, so there wasn't anyone next door. And as Andy has said on many occasions, his next door neighbour's stairs are on the opposite side of the house. Now, clearly it could be, again, it was windy. Maybe there was a sound of something being knocked next door. Maybe it's the old house settling. Maybe it's pipes. I don't know. But interestingly, that little cabinet that Andy was talking about that Dolly was barking at the other day, that is also right by where I heard the sound of footsteps on stairs. So it was very, very intriguing. I have now heard those footsteps myself, and I'll be absolutely honest with you. When I heard them, I didn't think, oh, there's the spooky footsteps. I just thought, I'm really glad I don't live in a terraced house anymore where you hear people running up and down stairs. And then I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Those are the footsteps. They must be the footsteps that Andy's been talking about. But yes, typical that we only heard it once I'd packed away all my gear. But we have recorded that strange knocking sound that I swear, that wasn't the noise I was trying to capture. The noise I was trying to capture was the sound of wind down a chimney, not that knocking sound. So yeah, it was fascinating interview with Andy for those reasons. And I'll just hand back over to him because I did ask him about the crystals. It's something that many of you have been asking me about. So here's Andy on the crystals.
But I think I remember what happened to them as well. I gave them to my friend's children who came over. They were about 5 at the time, I think, and they were really fascinated by them. And I told them the names of some of them that I'd looked up, and they were so sort of taken with them. I said, you may as well take them home with you. And so they're with them now. But yeah, I was surprised to hear that Carol hadn't left them, or her instant explanation was that they'd been apported. I say I'm open-minded. I think crystals apporting might be a stretch for me to believe that they can materialise out of thin air. I mean, I suppose never say never, but...
And in the spirit of never saying never, Andy has said that he is up for me and maybe a couple of others going around to his house with some of the ghost hunting equipment that we used at the Haunted Pound Stretcher, just to find out, is there anything environmental or scientific that we can pick up on at his house? So this isn't the last that you're going to hear about Andy's house and what's haunting it. I hope that by the end of this season of Weird in the Wade, we will be able to bring you some ghost hunting audio from Andy's house. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Bethan Briggs-Miller for spending some time with us and talking with us about her experiences and those red and green flags to look out for if you are considering joining a paranormal investigation group or attending a ghost hunt or investigation. If you'd like to know more about Bethan's work and to listen to the wonderful podcast that she makes, Eerie Essex, then check out the show blog and description. There are links to where you can find out more and hear more from Bethan herself. And of course, my biggest thank you goes out to everyone for listening. Thank you so much for listening to Weird in the Wade. Weird in the Wade is researched, written, presented and produced by me, Nat Doig. Theme music is by Tess Savagir, and all additional music and sound effects are from
You know the words that dominate our news cycle.
Private equity keeps inventing
generative artificial intelligence on home. America's chip fueled by market volatility.
Bets on Fed rate cuts.
But do you truly understand how they impact your world and your wallet? In a world that skims the what, understand the why. Because context changes everything. Subscribe to learn more at Bloomberg.com, the global benchmark for business news.
Every minute your finance team spends wrestling with data is a minute lost. Insight Software's AI-powered insights instantly move you from complexity to clarity. Automated analysis, real-time reporting, strategic recommendations, all at your fingertips. Transform how your finance team works and watch your business grow. Stop wasting time. Start making smarter decisions. Learn more at insightsoftware.com/AI.
Epidemic Sound.